G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute, joined today by Badges, or like what I like to call the bottom bar spread. I got no idea why I'm saying that, but yeah. I need a name for you now.
Rude.
A British name that I'll have to make up. I don't know. Badges the Brit. I don't know. We'll come up with something. Right. So, I was saying to Badges before this show, one of the very first shows I did when I kind of came into the Inforunners was one on Titansuits. And it's been a really long time, like all the way back to like I think 2017. It's been a really long time. And obviously this week on the monthly report for Squadron 42, they mentioned, talking about a Titan suit, and I went into the live stream going, cool, they're finally going to work on Titan suits and all that. And I think we're wrong about that. And so that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. But also I wanted to talk about Titan suits in general, because we just really haven't talked about them in a really, really long time. And the reason Badges is here is obviously he's got some military experience. So one of the things we're going to go over is some of the pros and cons of them. And I think we'll just go straight into that. So in your experience or your thought process, because it is just all theory right now. That's the other thing I should say about this episode, is that it is going to be heavily theory based and speculation based and kind of hopes and dreams and stuff like that. Because realistically, there's one image they've ever really released. They really haven't given us a lot to work with over the years. So, but we'll go through that as well. Just get the work stuff out of the way. Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Want to go the extra mile on Patreon? Yada yada yada. You guys know all that stuff anyway. But I gotta do the dance. Right. With that out of the way, then your thoughts, pros and cons, Badges, on Titan suits. Where do you think the natural order of things are going to be? Because I don't know. I've said before, I think they're just tanks for inside. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, just to temper expectation, obviously got military experience, but funnily enough, my my experience with completely enclosing armored exosuits is 0.
Right. Well, you're off the
so
professional list. You're off the professional
right,
list.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Completely fictitious, entirely enclosed armored exosuits.
I'm Badges. I've been sent backwards through time to tell you about Titan suits.
Get to the chopper. Yeah. No. So there's yeah. I mean, there's two sides to this for me. There's everyone can see the game applications. You know, we can all get really excited about what it's capable of doing in game. I think the bit for me, and this is the two sides of it, is that okay, but what are the drawbacks? You know, what stops the Titan suit from just becoming the de facto? It's like, why would I ever take another piece of armor? I have a Titan suit. Like, I wouldn't take light, medium, or heavy armor because there's just no need.
I would. My brain goes to outside. They have a speed advantage over other vehicles, but then as soon as you put them inside, they're in a confined space, and that is a massive drawback. They would be rather cumbersome. And I don't think. Well, my brain goes to turning. You know, I always think of like, as I said to you, that and I've said this to you personally before. I always figured them like a tank with a squadron. So even in the screenshot here in the background, you can see they've got troops around them, and I think that's how they're going to operate. That they are going to need to be, you know, work in tandem with actual troops. They're not going to be a lone gunman, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, if you want to take the tank analogy, it's been a truism of armor ever since we've had armor that, you know, the more heavily armored something becomes, the less maneuverable it is, and the more vulnerable its flanks and rear become. So, you know, to have an open conflict, you know, just in the middle of the desert with just tanks is entirely doable, because you've got very few limits to your maneuverability. You know, and I'm not talking pure sand dunes, because they're death, the tanks. But, you know, you're talking in the middle of rocky tundra nowhere. You know, tanks, fine, as long as those rocks aren't big enough to impede them moving. But the minute you put them into a city, you're now talking combined arms. This isn't tanks taking over a city. This is tanks assisting infantry taking over a city. And I think that comes back to a lot of what you're saying, in that this isn't going to be Titan suits in an underground facility or in an enclosed space winning the fight.
Yeah.
It's going to be them supporting infantry winning the fight.
like, because initially I kind of outside I think them as the light, nimble, quick thing, but then as soon as you put
Mhm.
them inside, they switch to the tank role. So they actually go from, and when I say tank, I'm not talking, I'm talking like health
Mhm.
sponge, because they're going to be, I could see them like holding up a shield or something like that with shoot troops behind them or whatever, or coming forward to protect someone to get someone out of there or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't, you know, in a confined space. I was saying to you before the show, literally, the biggest weakness of something like this is going to be a vent or a locked door. They're screwed.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the ability to turn. I mean, there's actually, we were talking about this earlier, there's actually a story um within the lore that was released 3 years ago, that actually mentions one of the characters in it is in a Titan suit, and he's in what they call a quote unquote a heavily modified vehicle so that he can actually fit inside it.
Yeah.
Which indicates, like you said, that actually the chances of them fitting into normal vehicles is slim to f all. Even something as big as the Spartan, I
Yeah.
just don't think they're going to fit. They're going to be too big,
Mm.
which means they need to be able to not necessarily keep up, but you'd want some sort of movement. And I keep going back to Warhammer 40k. They talk about the Space Marines being able to do this kind of really like long loping, almost like the walking on the moon. It's just this really long motion of running, which obviously works great in straight lines, but you're not exactly the most maneuverable. So just being able to put it into some sort of kind of like cruise control in a straight line makes sense, like you were describing before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it talks about that they're in this vehicle, and it says that on the vehicle they've actually converted it to have a rotating platform to assist the Titan suit turning, so it can actually fire in more than one direction. So again, going back to what you were saying about not being maneuverable, not being able to turn particularly easily, that seems to be borne out by what's going on. Because you think about the way we work, you think about the way our legs work and everything else, the amount of joints, sockets, the way all that works. If you're trying to build in all that motion and put armor and stuff on that and make that incredibly well protected, that's just an engineering nightmare.
Yeah.
Regardless of what time period we're talking about, that's just not something that's easily replicated.
Well, yeah, a ball socket joint is just something they haven't seemed to kind of be able to master properly from a mechanical purposes. They all have rotating joints, and they just really haven't been able to pin down. Well, because muscles are a really interesting thing in how they work, and they've never really been able to pull them off with any how to put this movement of weight. They can get them to work on really light things, but they can't get them to work on really heavy things. So until they pull that off, I don't think we're going to see any Titan suits in the real world, so to speak. Not with any decency, anyway. I think the other thing, I'll flick over real quick to this. So this is the image I was talking about earlier. This is the only real one that they've ever really kind of released. They have had some other kind of, like the one in the background, which is a bit of a concept one. But this one actually kind of got details out, like how you stand in it, how you actually control it. It even goes into some of the arms and talks about how the arms swap out and stuff like that. So essentially, we could, in theory, I doubt it because it's so hyped, just be getting one suit that has multiple attachments, right? And in the lore, it also talks about they were originally industrially designed, and then they got moved over to military purposes, which is kind of interesting because in the real world, military tends to push the innovation.
It goes back the other way, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I honestly think the amount that this has been hyped, and with what I might just kind of say the part I was going to say at the end now, because it actually kind of does bear reference here. So the information I have is it came through some of the leak stuff when I was back working with leaks, and the things that they heard was that the only Titan suit in the entire game is this guy in the background, and he is a boss in Squadron 42. Now, you combine that with the information that came out this week, which was that it was in the monthly report for Squadron 42, and it said animation started on the Titan suit. It didn't say suits, it said suit, right? And so
Mhm.
that implies that there is one numero uno, and if it is a boss, like what I've been told in the past, then it's just an essentially an AI. And if you're just doing animations for an AI that moves around the screen, it's a lot easier than having to do all the controls and all that for a human player. So it's a lot less work essentially. So the bearer of bad news of what I'm trying to say is I don't think they have started on Titansuits for Star Citizen, and I think when they do, I think it'll be a lot more fleshed out because of the hype around these things. That's why we've never seen them though, because we all know they are working on Squadron 42, but it's a lot more work to bring those over. They've got a much like something like the Ranger bike that has a bespoke system. This is
Mhm.
even more bespoke because it's not just wheels, it is walking and movement. It's essentially like making a whole new character because the way it animates, like look at those legs, how they go backwards and all that stuff. That is completely different. That's like taking the Vandal or the Banu or the Zion or something like that and actually animating them that way, and they've got to move very robotically, so they're different animations and all that completely. And then, as I said, the control mechanisms. If you have the arm swap on and off like they do in this picture, all the different arm types, you can see where it becomes very complicated very, very quickly, and it is literally its own little bespoke system. And I think that's why we've never seen it
Mhm.
because it's a lot of extra work. It is, they can take a ship and essentially copy the code over to the other one, and then start modifying it to get to something more bespoke, right? Can't do that with this because it is bespoke.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a lot harder to do. So taking that information, I know that was a lot that I just chugged through really quickly. But I think you can see very quickly if we kind of go back to, say, industrial suits, what type of industrial suits do you think we could possibly see?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll put a pin in the bits that you said about what we've had before and what we
Yep.
think we know now, and we'll come back to it later on.
Yep.
So hang around for that. That is not the end of that conversation, I promise. But yeah, the I mean, when you look at all of the possible applications, I mean, I can't think of many other than possibly lab work where a Titan suit isn't going to be useful. I mean, crashing around a hospital in one of these things, maybe not so much.
Mm.
But everything else, we were talking earlier, even mining, yeah, sure, you can do mining with it. You could do search and rescue, lifting rocks out of the way. You could be, putting cutting devices. I think they were talking about the smallest size ship weapons can be mounted to these things. So, like having a ship-sized cutting device to get to people who are in trouble quickly.
Mm.
You're talking power. I mean, obviously the cargo factor's the big one, right? And everyone wants to see the Ripley style, "Get away from her, you bitch!" sort of
Yep.
power loader. And the other thing as well is just like all of the potential things, like the levels of Titan suits. So you've got
Mm.
this thing in the background, which is obviously enclosed. It looks fairly posable the way it's kind of got the weapon twisted across its body. It's not just stood there with it pointing forward and it's got to kind of do some very stiff. It looks almost completely articulated.
Yep.
And you compare that to Ripley's power loader from Aliens, which isn't, you're not even enclosed. You just climb up into it, you stand on it, you've got joysticks, and as you move, it mimics you, sort of thing, as opposed to you standing inside and moving it, which is what your pictures showed.
Yep.
Right? Moving two joysticks and two things next to you, that's very, very different to your arm being inside it and moving it. So, yeah, I mean, you can see that sort of like very basic, cheap, here you go, deliver 10 of them to a station, there's your cargo loading suite for a while, versus environmentally sealed, able to clamp to the side of a ship or whatever, or to something in zero G, fight the right way up as it sees it. I mean, there's all sorts of levels, and we were talking about how you would take these things down. from EMPing them to, you know, on the cheap ones, being able to go up and actually cut pneumatics, you know, with a blade, just go and like
stick a pipe in the
power
cog.
lines or fuel lines. Yeah, exactly that. You know, being able to shoot the hydraulics and stuff like that and start, you know, the suit struggles and all of a sudden one of the legs can't move because it's got no hydraulic pressure.
Throw a paper clip in the Drake one. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
They are technically classed as an class 9 spacesuit is what it actually classes them as. So I don't know if that means they're all going to be that way. But I think this first one has to be that type of thing. I do agree with you. Excuse me, I've got really bad hiccups all of a sudden. I do really agree with you that we'll probably end up getting different types. I'd also like to see like a light, medium, heavy thing, much like we've already got with armor. You know, because I think the heavy would be the really good one to have indoors, but then something really light, quick, and nimble outside. They do technically have a size 1 guns, and back when they were wanting to put guns on this thing, that's when we actually saw a rework of the guns on the ships as well, and they made them a lot smaller than they were. And so you'll probably, you know, get one. I don't know how many. I can't imagine there being one on each shoulder, but you know, like one with one on one shoulder or something like that. You know, like a ballistic cannon type of thing. That'll probably appeal to a lot of the Gundam people, if you know what I'm talking about when it comes to stuff like that. But almost any profession where you can see a hazardous environment, I think you could see one of these. So I just couple off the top of my head, like a medical one, an engineering one, like trying to repair a tank in the field or whatever like that. You know, salvage, mining, it just goes on and on and on. Like even refining, if it's like a toxic refining, you could put it almost in, as you said, almost every profession. I just don't see, and with the hype around them, I just don't see them not doing something like that, because they know how much people want these. It'd be a massively missed opportunity funding wise to not do that. And I think they could, like, I've had people say things like, can you imagine an Argo one? Can you imagine this? Can you imagine that? And I can, ironically. I can even, like, the bizarrest one I've thought of is an Origin one for a VIP, like a VIP safe room suit. I could see that. I don't know about you, but you know what I mean? Like, so he's unassassinatable, you know, like the UEE guy goes to Drake headquarters and like, oh, kill him, but they can't because he's,
holy shit,
you know, like the Pope Mobile, but like he actually walks around. That
you could have your personal security. I mean, one of the ideas I love with this is like the non-lethal, like the kind of, all right, yeah, you can strap a gun to it. You know, well done, genius. That was that. Now you're thinking, you know, but all the other things you can do, like forego the gun, give them a shield generator that generates a bubble around them. So you've got your VIP stood there doing his chat, and stood behind him are 2 guys in Titan suits, and you're there with your P6LR. You take the shot, and it pings off the shield, and then all of a sudden, you know, both Titan suits just kind of look up at you, and it's like, this is gonna go poorly. Run! Yeah, there's loads of things you can do with these, and you know, if they make it correctly, like you said, the sheer appealability to us, you know, to want to buy one. I mean, you think of the mercenary orgs out here who might want a unit of 5 of these things. Can you imagine if they make it so that you could individually color each panel, give us huge amounts of ability to customize decals and things like that? Even, why not give us the ability to upload, pending their approval, a unit patch? So some graphic designer in your org creates a unit patch for them, which you're then able to upload and then have as your unit decal in the game. So, you know, you're able to identify individual units, even individual people in the game, by nothing but their Titan suit. That would be kind of awesome, just visually, without the scanning, without all that nonsense. Just looking at it going, holy shit, that's executes.
It's basically up there with what they've talked about ships customization, and I'd expect the same thing for vehicles as well in down the road as well. I also kind of sit here and think a lot about bespoke weapons, because like you could have a mortar Titan, you know, you could have like all the different variants they could do. Like I look at the Spartan platform, and I actually think this has probably got even more potential than that. realistically, like, because it is a very, like, mech suits are a really big thing with sci-fi, and in a game where they've basically said there are no robots, this is kind of the closest we're going to get. And I think,
Live out your Gundam fantasies.
well, I think it's going to be a fairly popular one, but from a military standpoint, like, do you see, like my vision is it's kind of like a vehicle. Is that kind of where you see it? Like it you know, it's going to go toe to toe with like the tanks, the cyclones, that type of thing. Like it's probably like a medium vehicle. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just asking your thoughts there.
This genuinely creates a class of its own. The way I look at this is things like crew serve weapons, and you've already talked about one, right? Like you talk about medium and heavy mortars. They're not the light ones that people take out of a backpack, unfold, stick on the deck, fire 3 shots, pack it up, and run again.
Yeah.
Medium and heavy mortars are significant bits of kit.
Yep.
You know, you think about, you know, okay, we have LMGs and medium machine guns, but you think about something like an M2 machine gun that needs to be set up. It needs its own tripod if it's being set up without anything else. It you know, and the thought that needs to goes into
the foot locking thing. That in one of the mech ones I've seen, they like deploy these extra feet and they like lock into the ground before they like, and they put their hands on the ground and then they like, you know, like fire off the things.
They fire like harpoons into.
You could have
pin them in place.
You could have like an AA variant that has like missiles that come off the back and all that type of stuff. You could literally have a squad of all these things. Literally, if it was like you said, really, that'd be cool.
Yeah. And you know, but those sorts of crew serve weapons, they have to be sighted carefully. They have to be sighted with support, unless they're, you know, kind of identified and taken out in isolation. And that, for me, is that this is like a mobile crew served weapon. You know, it's got the ability to it elevates that mobility just because it can almost, I guess, fire on the move. You would expect. But, you know, and then sure, it needs to be sighted because it's not going to be as maneuverable as infantry, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than placing something down, setting it up, taking the time to, you know, get the ammo boxes out, loading the ammo. This thing's going to be ready to go. As long as it's facing the right way, we're good, sort of thing. Yeah, there's a lot that can be done with these. I really like, when you look at the space on the shoulders and all that sort of stuff, it's maybe not lethal variants, but what if it gets in trouble? So it just pops smoke. It just sends up smoke canisters in all directions, and all of a sudden you've got this, you know,
giant bright lights or flashes or whatever. Yep, to blind targets, all that stuff. Yep.
Yep, break locks, break missile locks, and all that sort of stuff. It's got that ability.
We haven't even got into things like, you know, thrusters and stuff like that, or, you know, like, because a lot of people don't think that they will. I think you kind of talked about that. Maybe they not. Was it Algrid? I think it said he doesn't think they'll do dropship just for this. But I think they're missing a real opportunity if they don't do something around these suits.
I think
just come how popular they
get
are.
Something bespoke for them, but I see what he's saying in terms of firing them from orbit. I think goes against, you know, and just putting them in their own drop pod and dropping them down.
Yeah,
I think that goes against the use case of them because, like we said, you know, they need support.
I don't think there's ships that you can't use them in already, like the Liberator, the the Liberator, the Hercules, and the Valkyrie. I think all of those could go in those ships. You know,
and I mean, this is probably a good time to start talking about the other side of Titansuits, which is, you know, we've seen all the good stuff. You know, possibilities are probably literally endless with what you could do with them. Now we've got to talk about what we always talk about when there's something great in Star Citizen, is CIG's promise that there's always going to be a choice and nothing's ever a clear cut. You know, you take heavy armor, great, but you're not going to be as maneuverable. You're going to be a bigger target. You take lighter armor, far more maneuverable, less protection, you know, harder to spot. So what do you see as being the downside of the Titan suit? Because there's loads of upsides: better armor, bigger guns, multifunction. What's the downside?
So for me, I think it will be power requirements. So for me, I think they will be there'll be at least a couple of different types, right? So say there's one that works on a battery or whatever, but it'll eventually go flat, or one that goes on fuel and runs out of fuel, or maybe
Mhm.
there's one that's got like nuclear, but it can only be a heavy suit. You know what I mean? So you could have different power requirements and stuff like that. So literally, like, say they did put it in a single player variant, like, and I'm thinking of a game like Titanfall, right? They had ones in
Mhm.
that where the batteries ran out and you had to jump out and get a new battery or something like that. You could see that. I don't know if it'll be in Squadron 42 like that. I don't reckon it will be. But say it was, that could be a level where you're in a version of a Titan suit and basically you know, it's damaged or something like that, or the battery's got
Yeah.
around it. So you got to go, you know, you get out for a bit, you get back in, out, in, out. You get where I'm going with that pretty quickly. The gameplay writes
Yeah.
itself. But that's traditionally a very cliche when it comes to suits. Like, it's why we don't have them in the real world, because we just don't have the power requirements to fit in something that small. um
Mhm.
and I think that will be something that they probably play on. Again, it's been, they've done it in TV shows, movies, everything, like where you've got, you know, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the show. I'm going to say Evangelion, but I'm probably wrong.
Mhm.
Where there was a show that I'm thinking of, and I just can't remember the name, where they were in suits, but they only had a certain amount of time before the batteries went flat on them. So they only had like
Mhm.
15 minutes usage, and then they were stuffed. So they had to win the fights within 15 minutes. And
Sure.
it could be the same thing. So you're really powerful while you're going up against tanks or whatever, because you're, you know, but the tanks can outlast you. So if they can hold you at bay, they'll defeat you. And that is a really
Yeah.
common thing that I'm like, now I've spent more and more time in the game. Like I'll say to you recently, like ballistics versus lasers. You know, lasers refresh. They don't really. They essentially have a limited ammo. They just have to wait for a bit. Where ballistics do eventually run out, and you're stuffed. And it's the same thing with armor versus shields. You know, exactly the same thing. So what do you have for tanks? You don't really, or vehicles that kind of have
Mhm.
unlimited power. We don't have anything. So here's something like that that goes the other way, where it could be
Yeah.
more powerful, non-maneuverable, but only for a short period of time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, I think just from that, I've got this. You know, the kind of image in my head of being in the tank, cresting the hill, seeing the squad of friendlies pinned down by the Titan suit, and immediately the HUD of the tank just
Mm,
puts a targeting thing over the Titan suit, because it's like, look at the heat and all the energy signature that this mofo is generating. You know, and that obviously the tank ground is the Titan ender. You know, it's just like, tanks here, Titan suits useless now.
mm,
But yeah, I think you're entirely right with the way you're going with it. Limited use case in and of itself, and I think you're also right when you say Liberator, Valkyrie, that sort of um, kind of class of ship,
mm.
because I think there's going to be size requirements, and I don't think this is going to fit in the ramps of ships that normal people go through. So I'm thinking, you know, it's not going to fit up an Avengers rear ramp. I
Mm.
don't think this is going to fit in the back ramp of I don't know. I don't see this going into a Redeemer.
No,
You know, I think what you're going to need some sort of station
but
on a cargo grid that this thing docks into for power, for
mm,
repairs, for you to actually stand in and be bolted into the thing.
mm,
You know, there's going to be all that sort of requirement for it. And
mm,
then, like you say, the beautiful thing is, of course, is that when you do run out of power, you need to go and refuel it, whatever form that takes.
mm.
You're bolted into it,
Yeah.
so it ain't going to be you doing it.
I
You're
actually, I think there could be some variants that you get out of, or you
Mhm.
know, or it runs out of power, and the last thing it does, it just opens up. You know, so you
Yeah.
dropped out. But I do think, I remember it mentioned, you know, you mentioned the Redeemer there, but I was like, I think there could be some certain ships where, much like a Cyclone is used, this
Mhm.
could be used instead. It just depends on what variants they do. So one of the combat variants that we talked about for the Redeemer was the one that holds the Cyclone with a tractor beam. That's where my brain
Mhm.
went when you mentioned that, but that's not an official thing. So I was just like, yeah, but technically you could have something like that, because I could see a
Yeah.
Titan suit dropping off something like that. You know what I mean? Or a demon dropping off something like that. And we haven't even gone into things like, you know, as I said, jump packs, drop packs. anything that allows them to fly, and maybe not fly, but at least descend. You know,
Yeah.
because it is technically, as I said, a spacesuit, right? So it really depends where they want to go with it at the end of the day. Um, I wonder though if it could be too powerful, and will it take over too much from certain things? Because again, having the flexibility to go outside and inside is quite big. Um, and again, when I go to bigger ones, like
Hmm.
the heavier ones are the ones that I'd assume that you'd want to take inside because you don't need to move super fast, but they're very tanky. Where if you take something
Yeah.
very light, that's the ones I'd want outside for movement purposes, because you put this against a tank, my thought process is it's dodging the tank, or
Hmm.
it's literally got to be an anti-tank variant to take it on. Where if
Yeah.
you just had, well, look at that gun in the background, what's lightning going to do to a tank? Like, unless it somehow discharges it and it becomes essentially a distortion weapon, um, I just don't see it really doing much. So again, I think that's another inherent weakness of this, is that you are not generalized. You are kind of right. You're a
Yeah.
suit, but the weapons that you get are just very one off. So if you have
Yeah.
this distortion weapon, you can't also be carrying a massive ballistic rocket launcher type thing, right? So
Hmm.
that's another way they can limit it, is in, like you said, a squad of 5, but each one in the squad has their own bespoke role, and if you happen to lose that one guy, you can no longer do that shit because he's gone, or you have to put down your weapon and pick up his. But if his shit was actually attached to his suit and his suit was bespoke, well, then you're just screwed. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
that's kind of where my brain goes, where they are not a Swiss Army knife. They're not generalized. They are very, each single one is at a very tailored, specific role. And I know you've probably got a military example of that for me. Well, I'm hoping you do. But is there anything like that you can think of? Like, for example, like I think back to World War II, like a flat cannon. Generally, they were like the only good ones that I know of were the German ones, because they used them to shoot tanks, but they also used them to shoot in the air. But the Allies had two separate guns for that stuff, from as far as I'm aware. But you tell me.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of examples where things can dual role. I think where you struggle, like you say, is something that could do everything. And I'm thinking of a very few examples where that was the case. You've got the Flak 88s, which is the 88
Mhm,
that they ended up putting in the front of the tank,
mhm.
the Tiger. So you've got something like that that can take the shells.
Yeah.
It just depends on what shell you put into it and how that works. But there are that's pretty much on its own. You've got, like you say, the something like the Bofors, the British Bofors, was amazing against
Mhm.
aircraft, pretty good against infantry because it just shredded light armored targets,
Yeah.
and just utterly useless against medium to heavy armored vehicles.
So again,
Um,
in the generalized stuff, like you could probably pick up another two Titan suits gun. Like if he put this gun down, you could pick it up. But again,
mhm.
because there's less Titan suits, the ammo's more bespoke. You know,
Yeah,
and in the photo they actually showed the arms being taken off and on. Can you take the arm off an injured Titan as long as the arm's not damaged? Yeah, you could, but
and I think that
it takes
speaks to
time.
a really good example of when we're likely to see these. So, I know people are going to be here going, when, and you want a date. Well, obviously, we can't give you a date because we don't work for CIG, and we've got just as much information as the rest of you. We're just really sad and we pore over it. But I think when we're likely to see this is when we are able to, or certainly not before, we are able to change components on ships. We're able to take a
Mhm.
hard point and swap it out for another hard point in game physically ourselves.
It's
Get a tractor beam, take off a size 1 weapon, put
mm,
that down, put another one, go up to it, connect it, or do whatever you need to
mm,
do on the weapon itself.
yep.
And now you've changed your weapons. When we get to that stage, because like you said, X, like the chances for swapping out individual parts, legs, arms, damaged components, changing the weapon over to a tractor beam,
Yep.
we've got the loot. Now we need to get it on the ship, and
It's
the weight of it is such that a person with even a tractor beam gun
mm,
is beyond the individual. So now we need the Titan suit, because the Titan suit's got more weight. It can lift more with the Titan, with a tractor beam gun.
you
So
can
yeah, sorry, go on.
you can very quickly seal the work though. because if they do make it so that they pick up guns and carry guns, then just like all the human guns they've made, they've got to go and make another set of guns
Mhm.
just for Titan suits. But if they make them so that they use vehicle weapons and they just like attach to their shoulder, yes, they can use some of the ones they've used for vehicles. But still, as you said, they've got to put in components. I'm pretty sure the bosses are not going to use components, so they can use vehicle components that already exist. That's that saves a bit of time. But if they go down that bespoke route, like, and they make a mortar variant, an AA variant, all that type of stuff, it becomes a bit like the guns on the Vanguard. The nose of the Vanguard. They only work on that ship, and they are bespoke just for that ship. That is essentially what we're talking about. But if you go into every gun you make, or bespoke gun, it's a one-off just for that, and it requires a whole, at its best, it's like making a bigger version of a human, right? So they could technically take the gun code and scale it up. They could do that, but then you've got to do custom animation, so all the animations get redone. There's a lot of work there. It's a lot bigger than most people realize. And there have been a few other content creators that did videos this week going, "Oh, the Titan suits are coming," and I felt very bad watching them because I'm like, sadly, I think they're very wrong. But yeah.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Not yet. Not for a long old while. And we need to be very clear on that. We're going to see them certainly in Squadron 42, because one of the other things they said is they don't want spoilers, right? If this thing genuinely is the boss, and I have no reason to believe that it isn't, looking at that image, if this thing is the boss, we're going to see that boss before we see our own Titan suits, because it's going to be the wow factor of this thing. The whole, it's almost like a carbon copy of the power loader scenes. The doors open, this thing walks out, and we're all sat there going, the fuck is that?
But also, knowing how popular they are, we would have seen something by now, because they would have put it in the game, because they would want to sell it to fund stuff, because they know how popular these things are. And I think that's why we've never seen them, because there's just so much extra work required.
I've given them ideas. CID putting power loader Titan suits in the game for AI before they sell them to us, so we just spend all our time in the hangars watching this stuff walk around going, "Oh, what that? How do I kill him?"
You put a power loader for sale in this game, and it's going to sell like hotcakes. Like, just every man's kind of fantasy from when they were a kid, or woman too, I guess. But
interesting what you say about, what you were saying about bespoke weapons and that for Titan suits, is that this feeds back into how do CIG balance them out with regards to the rest of infantry, with light mechanized gameplay. And you can see, okay, so a bespoke gun is going to be really good at what it does, but it's going to be not great at the other stuff, and that's how you balance it out. Taking a laser repeater versus, a bespoke gun. All right, the laser repeater is not going to be great at what the bespoke gun does, but it's going to be better at the peripheral stuff. And that, again, is that sort of balance and everything else that they're striving for. What's also interesting is with these suits is having Titan pilot undersuits as opposed to flight undersuits. And maybe that introduces its own class. You need a simple one for the power loader style. You need an intermediate one. So rather than light, medium, heavy, basic, intermediate, and advanced. And that's where it comes into. But I would love to see one with a ballistic Gatling, and you just watch all the rounds cycle through the feed, the huge armored feed that it goes in. And I've got images in my head of the third Matrix film where you've got the big things walking, and you've got the guy climbing up the back to push the box of ammunition in, to load the thing. It would just be perfect. Yeah, that would be.
The one I've been thinking of is like a recon suit. So how SA talked about painting and then targeting with weapons and extending ranges and stuff like that. So like a recon one that goes in and it's got like some kind of, sight thing or something, so it can laser target stuff, but it's really light and quick, but it doesn't actually really have much guns of its own at all. It's really maybe just some stuff to get it out of dodge, or as you said, smoke grenades or something like that to distract people. It really is just super nimble and quick, and I could see something like that as well, like a really good recon one.
This is the amazing thing for, like, where you say the non-combat applications. So the recon one has, you know, the bit that flips down like the Mandalorian,
Yeah,
where it's able to target, and then it's got its own inbuilt scanner instead of weapons, so it's able to have its own radar plot of what's going on around it.
Yeah.
You've got the hacking one, the one that actually walks up to an interface, physically interfaces with the server rack, and is pulling information out, and it's got all these extra kind of hacking systems that enable it to do so much more than your little dude with his little handheld device.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the warfare ones that block people scanning you, that, you know, are able to move around with tanks to block their signature and reduce their signature down and all that sort of stuff. There's so much fun you could have with this.
I've just thought of one with like an EMP cannon that just goes, just like totally disables a tank. Just
like, I mean, if you want to be massive, yeah, absolutely. But you know, you could literally take this anywhere. What about Mad Max, the dude on the front of the rig with the flame throwing guitar? Just have one with speakers. You know, the old going in playing Fortunate Son as you guys are all attacking an outpost, just blasting that out. It's like, I mean, all right, maybe not that, but definitely that.
But you can definitely see the potential there for not just Star Citizen but other games as well. And I guess I'll kind of roll that off to you guys in the comments, like because obviously we've got some pretty crazy out there ideas here, but like I think the potential for these things are quite vast. And I think they are just almost as expansive as humans on foot or vehicles or ships. You know, I think it is. I think it literally is another category. It is like, as you said, it's to what say an Ogryn or a Space Marine is a Warhammer 40k. It is a bigger, more powerful human. It is another class of human. I'd almost like to see how these things go toe to toe with a Vandal, because essentially they are almost about the same height. You know, so. You know, I think the other thing I'll ask in the comments is, do you think that this would be a cool thing to see in episode 2 or episode 3 of Squadron 42, where they have something like that? Like, is the origins of these things because they were designed to help us kind of combat the Vandal or some other alien race? I don't know. I'm just kind of.
I'm in my happy place imagining some massive set piece that you walk into of Titansuits versus Vandal. Just, oh my god.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I think the other,
like law enforcement and bounty hunting ones is like, that's not a taser. This is a taser.
Yeah. Just even a giant tractor beam to pull the guy back. All right, over here, come on, like a lasso gun that just
just all the, you know, like you said, the almost the riot or the suppression. You can imagine Hurston, you know, kind of employing ones like you were saying with riot shields.
Yep.
And they just walk forward with these huge riot shields, and you know they just deploy like CS gas grenades, or they've got stun batons or whatever else.
I can see one with just this for riot control, just lightning guns the whole crowd. Get out of here!
Are you hearing this, Algrid? Are you hearing this? I'm trashing Hurston, and you're not here to defend them.
But I think the other thing I'll ask for in the comments below is like, is there any other kind of industrial applications we haven't thought of? You know, like I thought of like a welding one, like for repair and stuff like that. And me and Arrogant have talked this about a fair bit. We honestly thought the original cutter was going to be a Titan suit, like a salvaged Titan suit that went in, cut the components out. Because it's bigger, it's able to carry them and then EVA back across. Now it looks like that possibly is not going to be the case. But I'm just curious is it like, it is very expansive. Like, so there is nothing off the table here, but like, I guess I'm asking, do you see it as a whole new class potentially down the line for what this can be in the comments? But Badgers, what would you like to hear?
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things we're going to hear if we don't cover it is how we've made the statement that it seems at the moment to be only our boss that's getting this, and you know, I think we need to reply to that, which is we've since seen, obviously, in multiple studio reports and stuff, them talking about Titan suits, and specifically in one, there was a mystery suit of armor they'd hinted at, and in one of their roadmap roundups, they'd actually said, no, this isn't the Titan suit yet. So
every time
I think it is now clear we're going to get hold of these things, but
every time they mention Titan suit, it is not suits, it is Titan suit. It is one plural, not plural, sorry. And so that again, I think down the line, if they decide to bring them into Star Citizen, I think they will be multiple. But I think they'd be missing a massive opportunity with just how popular that one suit's been. I just, I think it's probably,
if they want,
I think it's probably much further down the road than we actually realize.
Yeah, if they weren't coming to to the PU, sorry, is what I meant to say. If they weren't coming to the PU, then that would have been the ideal moment to say, yeah, no, you guys aren't getting Titan suits, just like you guys aren't getting, access to the big military stuff.
Yep.
As opposed, apart from very specific, specialized, rare circumstances. But they didn't. And the other thing is, of course, that in terms of talking singular, I hear what you're saying. But of course, they talk about they're working on the Connie Andromeda, not all insert ship name here. They're working on the Santoki Eye, not they're working on Santoki Eyes. So yeah, that might just be a trick of language rather than something we read into too much.
That said, though, they are on a Squadron 42 report, not on a Star Citizen monthly report. So
yeah. But yeah, no, I just give us surprise us with your most impressive non-combat application for this thing. Is there going to be a Titan suit Mako, a reporter's Titan suit?
Are you gonna,
for example,
are you gonna pick a winner? They just will be in the comments picking a winner. There we go.
How about the flame guitar sound rig that allows you to play your Org's chosen battle song as you charge into battle? Just make it a good one. Don't make it a rubbish battle song.
I wonder if there's
Nightwish.
I wonder if there's a really weird way they can make it so there's a way for Titan suits to pick up human-sized weapons, and then they like it's like a multi-hand or something that they can fire two at once or something, Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. There's something there as well, because I could see one, like you said, kind of working as a squad thing, and they've got like a radio on them or whatever, and they go, "Yeah, Commander, there's some planes coming in or whatever," But we'll see. Yeah. All right. So there's a lot of possibility there. I think we've kind of probably gone on a little bit long here, but yeah, I'd like to know what you guys think. So let us know. All right. With that, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, go the extra mile on Patreon, Twitch memberships, YouTube memberships, all that stuff. Do you want to plug yourself a bit? Where can people find you on the interwebs, Badges?
I am hiding on Drinkers for Gamers Problems channel on YouTube, and Sunday 9 till 11 UTC. I am streaming on YouTube and Twitch.
Well, that'll be tonight.
It will be.
Okay.
If it comes out today.
No, it's coming out tomorrow. But anyway.
So that'll be yesterday.
Yeah, you all missed it. Right.
And I'm very, very disappointed that you weren't there. Right. How very dare you?
Yeah. Yep. Well done. Good job missing it. No. All right. With that, then, he's been Badges. I've been Execute. Catch you in the next one.